Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called How the Netherlands Accidentally Moved to a 4-Day Week. So this looks very interesting, what a happy accident. So let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Earlier this year, Eurostat published data on the average working week across the EU for 2024. Like with most Eurostat releases, no one really noticed, but there was a pretty interesting number in there, 32.1, which is apparently how many hours the average Dutch person works, by far the lowest in the EU, and essentially equivalent to a 4-day week. So in this video, we're going to explain how the Netherlands accidentally moved to a 4-day week, and why it looks like it's working pretty well.
Yeah, people are less stressed, so they do like a better, the quality of the work like improves, maybe?
Have you ever wondered how much money TLDR makes each year? Or who's funding our journalism? Well, we think transparency is super important. So we answer both questions in our recent video. It's linked in the description. So the first thing to say is that this didn't happen suddenly. Rather, it's the culmination of a long-running trend that apparently started sometime in the mid-80s. Before then, the Dutch were about as likely as anyone else to work part-time, with about 6% of working men and 22% of working women in part-time employment. But by 1990, this figure had risen to 15% for men and 36% for women, and by 1996 it had risen to 16% for men, the highest figure in the OECD, and 38% for women, behind Sweden and the UK, but well above the OECD average. So what happened in the 80s to provoke this shift? Well, broadly speaking, there were two factors at play. First, Dutch unions accepted a reduction in working hours for their membership to cope with the economic downturn that hit Europe in the 70s and early 80s. This wasn't the case in most other European countries, where, generally speaking, unions instead tried to protect as many full-time jobs as they could, even if that meant more redundancies. This was largely because the Dutch economy, and especially Dutch industry, had a particularly rough time in the 70s and early 80s. Quite a lot of this has to do with a phenomenon that's since become known as Dutch disease. In short, the Netherlands began producing and exporting lots of natural gas in the mid-70s, when energy prices were rising worldwide. While this was great news for anyone in the gas industry, it was bad news for anyone employed in basically any other industry. Strong gas exports put upwards pressure on the Dutch currency, the guilder, which made the Netherlands' other exports uncompetitive, leading to widespread bankruptcies and job losses. The Netherlands then suffered a particularly brutal recession in the early 80s, with GDP contracting for 8 consecutive quarters between 1981 and 1983. With exports collapsing and the domestic economy in the doldrums, Dutch unions accepted that they needed to do something drastic. In November 1982, as part of the so-called Wassenaar Agreement with Ruud Lubber's new right-wing government, the unions agreed to both lower wages and accept fewer working hours in order to keep Dutch industry afloat.
They had to do something.
This worked remarkably well, and in the subsequent economic boom, a lot of the new jobs created were part-time. The second factor was the entrance of women into the Dutch workforce. For a whole load of complicated cultural reasons, women moved into the workforce remarkably late in the Netherlands. But the rise of part-time jobs in the 80s acted as a sort of release valve, allowing women with children or other caring responsibilities to flood into the labour market. The transformation was pretty astonishing. In the 70s, the female labour participation rate in the Netherlands was less than 30%, the lowest in the OECD. But by the 90s, it had risen to over 50%, well above the OECD average. You get the idea. The Dutch shift to part-time work apparently began in the 80s, with both a supply-side element, in other words, a rise in part-time job creation after the unions accepted a reduction in working hours, and a demand-side element. In other words, there were lots of unemployed but well-educated Dutch women who were ready for part-time work. This seemed to work remarkably well. The Dutch economy boomed throughout the 80s and 90s, with strong GDP growth, low unemployment, and balanced budgets.
So it was perfect.
It was at about this time that economists started talking about the Dutch 1.5 earner model to describe households where one partner worked full-time and the other worked part-time.
That's
a consensus quickly developed amongst the Dutch political class that this 1.5 earner model was working pretty well, not least because of its dramatic effect on overall employment. And in the 90s, a series of new laws were passed to make it easier for part-time workers. In 1993, a new law extended the minimum wage, which was previously restricted to those working at least 13 hours a week, to all part-time workers. And in 1994, another law obliged employers to include part-time employees in pension schemes. In 1996, the Dutch Parliament passed the Working Hours Act, which included a provision obligating employers to consider the care duties of employees, essentially making it easier for full-time employees to move to part-time work. And in 2000, they passed the Part-Time Employment Act as part of the Framework Work and Care Act, which gave employees the right to change their working hours. Finally, this was updated in 2016 by the Flexible Working Act, which gives employees the right to adjust not just their hours, but also when and where they work. This legislation turbocharged the pre-existing trend towards part-time employment, which is why the Netherlands has had the highest incidence of part-time employment in the developed world for years now. For context, according to World Bank data, in 2023, over 60% of Dutch employees worked part-time, compared to an average of 31% in the OECD and 36% in the EU. Part-time work is still far more common with women, but Dutch men are also still more likely than any of their international peers to work part-time. This is the main reason that, on average, the Dutch work such short weeks, with the latest Eurostat data finding that the average Dutch work week comes in at just 32 hours, the lowest in the EU by quite some distance, and well below the EU average of 36 hours. Of course, this number is brought down by all the part-time workers. It doesn't mean, for instance, that everyone is working 4 8-hour days. But as part-time work has become ever more popular in the Netherlands, 4-day weeks have indeed become very common.
Yeah, of course.
So how's this working out for them? Well, to be honest, it looks like it's going pretty great.
Yeah.
The Netherlands has a remarkably high employment rate. According to OECD data, 82% of working-age people in the Netherlands were in employment at the end of 2024, compared with 75% in the UK and 69% in France. Nor does this seem to have hurt the Dutch economy. The Netherlands is an incredibly rich country, measured by GDP per capita, largely because Dutch workers are quite literally some of the most productive in the world.
Oh, okay.
Which might have something to do with the fact that they're not as burnt out as the rest of us.
Exactly.
And finally, families seem to appreciate it. Dutch kids are quite literally the happiest in the world, presumably at least in part because they get to spend more time with their parents.
Who knows? Okay, I did really like the explanation. I think I agree, which I think like people are so scared. Maybe the US, like that's maybe the American mind. But I think like people are so scared when you talk about like, oh, reducing like the work week, or maybe even the hours, like reducing the hourly, like, oh yeah, move it up to like four days a week, or just the hours themselves. People get like very scared. They're like, oh no, like no, people are going to be working less, and there's like the economy is going to collapse, and it's like, not necessarily, and I think the Netherlands is like a great example of this. It's like not necessarily, like working less hours doesn't necessarily mean being less productive, which I think is like that's the key, right? Like not because you're working like fewer hours means that you're gonna be working like the quality of the work it's not gonna improve, or it's gonna get worse. It's gonna worsen, or maybe like yes, you know, the productivity is gonna go downhill. So I really do think like people are like a little scared of like, of moving, of like, no, working less. You can't work less because it's like working less means like everything's it's gonna be a disaster. It's like, no, because I think like, you know, as it's not just like it's probably scientifically proven. It's like, no, like you can like, there's proof, like they have a proof over here that it's gonna be actually, people are gonna be like a little bit more productive. I don't really know if that's because, again, I get the logic behind this all is like, yeah, if people and workers are happier because they're working, like they're less burned out by the whole, you know, you have to like work, 50 hours a week, and you have to like be constantly working. People are gonna be, of course, they're gonna get burned out, and they're gonna get burned out, and not just that, it's gonna be, you know, they're gonna be stressed. They're constantly gonna be like, oh my god, you know, like I can't catch my breath. And it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be like unhappier people in general, and unhappier people makes for like stressed workers, and that you know, and that goes with people just being less productive in general. Because if you're not happy with the work that you're doing, chances are that even if you're like put your best on, because yes, you know, there's like a certain amount of hours that I have to comply with. it's not gonna be productive because you're like your brain's gonna have you're gonna have like the huge like brain block that's gonna be like, no, I cannot do my job properly, and that in turn make it probably like you're taking more time in doing tasks that probably will take you less time if you were just like very like, I have a peace of mind and I'm happy with my work and that with the work that I'm doing and I'm relaxed. So it is really like I think like snowballs from there. But I think if you actually get to look at the data, it's like, oh, okay, so this is actually better, like in the long term. It doesn't necessarily mean, because again, I think maybe like even, I don't know, like if it's like the thing about workers being scared of this, but I think definitely employers are scared. It's like, no, we can't. It's like, you have to work 5 days. It's like, not necessarily. And again, it's like, maybe I don't really know if oh, well, you can say like, you can argue, to play like the devil's advocate, that yes, maybe it worked in the Netherlands because maybe the Netherlands has a particular sort of like set of circumstances and they have like particular economy that makes it so that this actually like they were able to thrive in this environment. Maybe that's not, maybe it's not applicable to other places, to other countries like the US, that's very like, I'm thinking because it's one of the countries that actually works the most. So maybe like you can argue that. I don't really know. Obviously, you would have to like, maybe they would have to like run a model or just try it. Like some companies should maybe try and see like if it actually works. Because I don't know, I would guess yes, because I get the logic behind this, and I'm like, I don't think this is particularly a Dutch thing. Like, I would assume yes, people are gonna be, if they're gonna be able to like spend more time with their families, they're gonna be spending more time on doing other things. They're probably gonna be more productive. So it's like the thing that like the task that was gonna take you 6 hours maybe. If you're like, again, if you're like very blissful and because your mind's clear, like maybe it's going to take you half the amount of hours. Like, oh, actually I went by and the time flew past me and yes, I was able to finish in 3 hours. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they should definitely try it. I don't know if like companies maybe, because obviously to move, and again, we could see that the Netherlands actually like took the measures actually to make it so like they did a bunch of laws and they passed a bunch of laws and they've been doing this for like a bunch of years. So obviously that helped as well, helped like in the sense of like in the great scale of things to make it like a widespread thing, because obviously the law actually encourages for you to like to do this. And I'm thinking of like as a company or as an employer, but I think maybe, and again, other places, other companies, and maybe again it's like because I get it that to change laws, you actually need, you need a good, you need like probably good, you need to lobby and you need actual like proof that is actually this is going to work, or sometimes doesn't. Like sometimes you have a theory and the law actually like it's, oh, we're basing this on this theory and maybe it doesn't work because in real life things work differently. But I think companies like maybe should, because again it's internal and you can do whatever you want to because you have your own company, maybe like they should actually attempt to do this. Like I would be like, I don't know, I'd be like, do not be scared, just like maybe try it. I think you'd be surprised by how by people probably working, you could have like happier employers and happier workers, that they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more happier in general. And I think happier people in general are probably a little bit more productive. And it's like the thing about like I don't know if I agree with the whole like, oh, you have to work, it's like when you're like doing like office jobs or something, it's like, oh, you have to work like 8 to 5 or whatever it is. Like obviously technically yes, that's the case because you have to like, yes, there's like a schedule. But I think like as long as you have like your mind like, hey, you have to do this and this and that, and you complete like the work that you have to do in an appropriate like measure of time, I don't think like your employer should care whether or not you're like, oh yeah, because you can't leave the office early. Like you have to like, there's an hour for this and maybe you can't like leave early because you have to be stuck in here until 6. And it's like, yeah, but what happens if I already like finished my job? Like, yeah, you already finished everything that I had to do. What they do usually is that they'll give you like more tasks, but yeah, I think in general, like, it's like, you should just, like, have your work and just, like, do whatever it is that you want to, just as long, because I think as an employer, I just care about, like, the job being done. I don't care how long it takes you. I don't care, as long as, obviously, there's deadlines, but as long as, like, if I tell you, hey, I need this done by Friday, and yes, this and this and that, I need this amount of things to be done by Friday, and you do them, I don't really care if you're doing them like on Thursday all day night, you spend like, oh, I spend like the whole night doing this on Thursday. I don't care. Like as long as you're giving me what I ask you to do, I don't really care. Or maybe you're just like, oh no, I work like 2 hours like from Monday to Thursday in order for you like to give you like this amount of like the completion of tasks by Friday. It's like, I'm thinking of, as an employer, I wouldn't care. It's like, I don't care how long it takes you or how you organized your time, as long as you're actually giving me what I need. So I don't know. That's my perspective. I don't know. I know that some people actually do think like this, but I know that some others are like, no, you have to like, there's in the schedule for a reason, and if you have to be here until 6 p.m. is like, well, yeah, but I don't think that's really productive, because again, if people being productive actually means that they're going to be doing a better job, or maybe like you can put actually like assign more tasks to them, because they're going to be happier, and they're probably not going to be realizing, well, yeah, it's not going to take me like that amount of hours. Yeah, I can take on more tasks as long as I have like my own schedule where I work less. Then it's up to you. So I think like, I don't know, they should definitely try it. And yes, I do know it's a scary situation. But it's like, come on, look at the data, look at the Netherlands, like they've done this. So I think like if it worked for them, at least you should be able to try it, because I do really think that the results probably would shock people to see like, oh, who would have said, happier people like do a better job. It's like, yeah, well, we've been telling you this for years. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.